Hongju comes back to the coffee shop, wandering around in a daze because she can't see through her foggy glasses. Jae Chan guides her over, and then his eyes widen when she suddenly grabs his face to put ointment on his burn. They each complain about how ungrateful Sungwon and So Yoon are when they went through so much to save them, and Jae Chan softens as he watches her tend to his wound. When she asks for his finger next, he quickly turns around and rips off the band-aid he just put there himself. That's adorable. Hongju says that other people might not know how much he went through to save his brother, but she does, and that he did a good job. He smiles at that and tells her that she did a good job too.
They look out at the street, where the rain begins to fall and a man runs past, which transports us to another flashback 13 years ago. Dad ran for cover from the rain, and was startled when Jae Chan showed up next to him. Jae Chan had said sheepishly that he'd aim for more than subsistence living, not even knowing what it meant, and Dad realized that he was awake that night on the roof and heard everything he'd said.
Back in the present, Jae Chan asks Hongju why she doesn't wear contacts, thinking that she looked uncomfortable with foggy glasses. She just interprets this as another sign that he's fallen for her, wiggling her glasses around and wondering why he cares. He refuses to just tell her that she looks prettier without them.
She asks what he's going to do about So Yoon's father, expecting him to charge him properly for his crimes. But to her shock, Jae Chan says the case is already closed and his brother was saved, so that's that.
She can't believe he's planning to let it go just because of his caseload and his fear of getting fired, but Jae Chan whines that he has 3 years left on payments for a car he wrecked because of her. She rattles off a string of numbers in response, telling him that they're this week's lottery numbers. He scoffs, insulted that she thinks he'd decide what to say or do based on how much money he had. He leaves in a huff, and once he's gone, she swoons at his response.
Jae Chan runs into Yu Bum, who offers to buy him lunch now that their case is closed. But Jae Chan says he hasn't finalized the paperwork, saying that he found things that require further investigation. Yu Bum's temper flares at that, and he says that Jae Chan won't find anything no matter how much he digs.
Yu Bum says he knows Jae Chan's every move, and Jae Chan replies, "Do you know what's scarier than not knowing? Thinking you know everything." Jae Chan's smile fades into an icy glare and he stalks off, only to hide behind a car around the corner, wondering why he went and said such a thing. He tries to calm his racing heart and repeats Hongju's lottery numbers to himself. Jae Chan arrives at the office just in time to stop the paperwork from being delivered to his boss, and he grabs So Yoon's father's case file to restart the investigation. The chief prosecutor notes this and calls him in, and Jae Chan chants the lotto numbers on the way like it's a prayer.
The boss tells him to close the case, accusing him of digging his heels in because of his personal grudge against Yu Bum. Jae Chan says it's okay if the chief prosecutor thinks that, as long as he can stop this case from returning to them in the future as an even bigger crime. He vows to re-examine all of the past charges against So Yoon's father. The boss loses his temper, and the gossip spreads rapidly. The other prosecutors wonder if Jae Chan won the lotto or something, to make him act out like this. Jae Chan test drives a shiny new car later that day, and he stops to brag to Hongju about reopening the case. She beams proudly and wonders why he argued when he was going to do the right thing anyway, and then gasps when she sees the car. "You're not buying that because of those lotto numbers I lied about, are you?" she asks nervously.
Jae Chan tries not to let the shock show on his face, and lies that he totally knew she was kidding. She asks if he restarted the case because of the lotto numbers, and he reminds her that he's not the kind of person to let money determine his actions. He trips over his own feet on his way back to the car, and tells the salesman in a deflated voice that he'll buy the car, someday. Fellow prosecutor Hee Min jumps when she gets caught gossiping about Jae Chan, not realizing that he was brooding in the dark room over his worthless lottery ticket, which he rips up. He asks her about So Yoon's father, as she was the one who dropped the case the last time he was charged. Hee Min says she doesn't regret it, because domestic violence cases aren't so cut and dry, and the choice should be up to the victim. Them indicting the husband is passing judgment on a situation they don't understand, she says, and not knowing the difference between justice and acting brave means that he doesn't have the right to be a prosecutor. Jae Chan looks down at his ID tag as he thinks over her words, and the camera spins around him and takes us back to that rainy day 13 years ago. Inside a convenience store, Jae Chan had asked Dad what he wanted him to grow up to be. Before he could answer, a soldier had entered the store, and Dad noticed it right away, the nasty end of a large rifle, sticking out of the duffel bag on his shoulder. Dad asked Jae Chan to run home and fetch his cell phone, saying that he'd forgotten it, and on his way out, Dad stopped him to answer, "A prosecutor. I'd have no other wishes if you became a prosecutor."
Jae-chan agreed on the spot and stepped outside with the umbrella that his father had just bought him. Dad's smile faded as he looked behind him at the soldier, the same young man who got on Hongju's father's bus in her flashback. Later this very day, in fact. Jae-chan was waiting to cross the street when he heard the sound of gunshots, stopping him cold. He turned around as the soldier fled the scene, everything happening in slow motion. He ran inside to find Dad bleeding on the ground, and broke down in tears. As we see the other half of the funeral for the people killed by that soldier, Jae-chan narrates, "I knew it then, that my father had made a choice. He sacrificed himself to save other people, and the world called him a hero. But through that choice, my mother lost a husband, and Sung-won and I lost a father. Rather than feeling proud, I resented that choice. To the world, my father's choice was justice, but to me, it was just acting brave."
Back in the present, Jae-chan comes out of his reverie to find Woo-tak staring at him in wonder. He introduces himself as the guy from the Valentine's Day accident, and offers to buy Jae-chan dinner to thank him. They find out that they're the same age, and Woo-tak suggests banmal but Jae-chan shuts him down.
So-yoon helps out at Hongju's restaurant, clearly feeling bad about imposing but not willing to admit it. Hongju says she's a lot like someone else she knows, thinking of Jae-chan's habit of speaking badly when he's nice at heart. Sung-won grabs the dishes out of So-yoon's hands and barks at Hongju, calling her Ajuma, and sniping that a pianist can't get her hands hurt. He throws in a little wink at So-yoon for good measure, making her smile. Woo-tak leads Jae-chan to Hongju's restaurant, surprised to run into her again. Wait, is this really a coincidence? No way. Woo-tak says he regretted not asking her name the other night when he gave her a ride, and she agrees to use banmal when she finds out that they're the same age. Woo-tak says very easily that she looks prettier without her glasses and jokes that they're the three flying dragons, since they were all born in the year of the dragon, and Jae-chan looks annoyed that Hongju is so friendly and giggly with Woo-tak. At the same time, Yu-bum finds out where So-yoon and her mother are hiding and turns his car around. Sung-won is the one who ends up serving Woo-tak and Jae-chan, slamming the dishes onto the table with a whole lot of emotion behind it. Jae-chan snaps that he told him not to get involved in So-yoon's life, and Sung-won just ignores him. Woo-tak says he expected them to be very affectionate brothers, and Jae-chan is surprised that he knows they're brothers. He guesses that this isn't a coincidence, and Woo-tak says that's what he's curious about, whether it's coincidence or fate. He grabs Jae-chan's hand as he says it, making it look like a very different conversation. Woo-tak wonders to himself if things will really happen according to his dream, in which he'd come to this restaurant with his partner, and run into Jae-chan by chance on the way. He looks around and notes that everything else is the same, except he changed one small thing: he brought Jae-chan here instead of his partner. Jae-chan asks him to stop playing around and admit that this isn't a coincidence, but Woo-tak holds up his hand and thinks that if his dream is right, someone will walk through the door in 5 seconds. He counts down, and Yu-bum walks in right on cue. Hongju steps in front of So-yoon and her mother protectively, and Yu-bum says he's not here to see her tonight, but to speak to his client's family. Woo-tak gapes to see everything happen the way he'd seen it in his dream, and tells Jae-chan that it's definitely fate, and not coincidence. Woo-tak thinks to himself, I'm curious to know if the one trivial thing I changed will be able to stop the horrible thing that's about to happen.